Hey, here we go with another video, and this time we're going to be talking about the French and Indian War. Be careful about the name French and Indian War because it does not mean it was the French versus the Indians. It's named the French and Indian War because it was the American colonies and England versus the French and the Indians. Well, for the most part, it's not that simple. There were Indians fighting on both sides, but that's what they call it, so we're going to call it that too. You should know that the French and Indian War was the last of a series of four wars fought by Britain for dominance of the world. They fought against the French and the Spanish in these series of four wars. They don't get much playtime, so we're not giving much playtime. But do know that this war, the French and Indian War, is part of a bigger conflict with France called the 7 Years' War, which you learned about in world history. This is again about world dominance, and the end of this war is really going to change the balance of power in the world. It's going to have serious repercussions all over the place, not just in the Americas, which is what we're focusing on, but in Asia and in Europe and in Africa. It's going to happen all over the place. So this is a war that's taking place on 5 continents, taking place in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. It's really crazy, but like we said before about mercantilism, the goal of mercantilism was for these countries to get as much wealth and power as possible so they can maybe potentially rule the world. These are wars that are trying to do that, trying to rule the world. Okay? So in the Americas, this is a war over the very crucial and very important Ohio River Valley. Today, you look at Ohio, you're like, oh, Ohio, big deal. But that was sort of like the gateway to the West. Ohio is on the Great Lakes, very important river system through there, the Ohio River Valley. In fact, the city of Pittsburgh is on, those of you who are Pittsburgh fans for baseball or football probably, formerly Three River Stadium, the convergence of 3 rivers. And we know rivers are really important for transportation and for irrigation and for farming. So this was a really key location, very fertile land, and was definitely a disputed area between the French and the British. For a long time, the different nations from Europe colonizing North America didn't really come into much conflict because they were spread out far enough. There was enough space between them that it didn't matter. But by this time, we've got countries expanding and spreading into these areas. And so now finally, they're close enough contact where it's going to be time to butt heads. And of course, none of this really matters if you're a Native American because Native Americans didn't really count, right? Of course not. Okay, it's going to come down to the Native Americans picking sides. Who did they think was the least problematic for their existence? Not so much which is going to help them the most, but which is going to do the least harm. And so that's how they would choose sides between Britain and France. So this really begins. The French are, as you know, control Canada and much of the land west of the Appalachian Mountains. The British control the eastern seaboard, the east coast, up and down, all the way from Georgia, all the way north into what is now Maine, but that was still part of Massachusetts back then. And you learned all about that watching those other videos and filling out the charts in Unit 1A's packet before. Okay, so once the British, or the colonists, start to move west and venture across those mountains and really want to get to this fertile land, they're going to head west. They're going to start building companies. In fact, George Washington, 2 of his half-brothers are going to invest in what is a new company, the Ohio Valley Company. And they're going to venture west and they're going to try and colonize that part. And of course, as a result, they're going to be in conflict with the French. They're going to be coming out of Virginia and heading into that area. Of course, Pennsylvania is heading west as well. And so now we've got, hey, what are we going to do here? We're getting ready to claim the same lands as each other. So what the governor of Virginia does is he then decides he's going to finance and send the military out west to the western parts over the mountains and say, hey, this is our land to the French, you need to get out of here. But when they get there, they realize that they find that the French have already built a fort at the headway of those 3 rivers. It's going to be called Fort Duquesne. And so the military that they sent, which of course was headed by George Washington, they're going to stay out there in the west and they're going to build themselves a little fort and they're going to call this Fort Necessity. I guess they really needed to build this fort, so that's why he called it that. So this is really going to be the beginning of George Washington's military career, and for the record, it doesn't go very well at the very beginning. So essentially, Washington is going to set up this fort, and in the process of building this fort, they come across some French scouts, and in the process, they attack and kill about half of these French scouts. There's about 20, 30 of them, and 10, 15 of them get killed, and the rest get captured. And so the French decide they're going to strike out and say, hey, that's not cool. We're going to get revenge for this. And they attack Fort Necessity, and Fort Necessity falls. Washington gives it up after about a third of his forces die. Of the 300 troops that he had with him, 100 of them are killed. And so he says, we've had enough of this. And he backs off. Washington's not the best start for his military career. Good for the United States. He kept up, didn't quit. Okay? So shortly after this happened, a bunch of delegates from the 13 colonies meet in Albany. You don't hear a lot of talk about this either, but they have what's called the Albany Congress in 1754. Here, they meet and form a committee to try and come up with some kind of colonial government. Not each colony having its own government with a governor or whatever, but sort of a government of all the colonies together. Since Britain and the king is so far away, and for so long the British have kind of hands off with their salutary neglect, they figured they need to have some kind of organizing body for the 13 colonies together. A committee headed up by Mr. Benjamin Franklin comes up with the great idea. There should be an executive, someone that's going to be there to kind of carry out the laws, and then a legislature that's going to be made up of delegates or representatives from all of the 13 colonies. This does not get the support of the colonists, nor does it get enough support from England. The colonists are really not happy about this because they're saying that this is another layer of dictatorship upon them, and they didn't want a strong central government. And England says this isn't any good because this is too much of you like trying to be independent, so nobody was happy, and so it didn't really work out. But, spoiler alert, this sort of becomes a heads up for what's going to come with the Articles of Confederation, which, if you don't already know, be prepared, it was the first Constitution of the United States. Well, the British want to get revenge for losing Fort Necessity, so Colonel Washington now teams up with General Braddock, a British commander who's now in control of the forces there. The British finally now have a chance to bring the troops over. And Braddock is supposedly the symbol of this great invincible British army. They are supposedly unbeatable. He is arrogant about it and feels he cannot be defeated. So as he's marching in his standard normal procedure in nice rows towards the fort, the French ambush and attack Braddock and the forces from all sides, and they're forced to flee and are it's a horrible defeat for the British. Well, not only is it a defeat just for Braddock, but this sends shockwaves throughout all of the world, but especially in the colonies, where the British are like, wait, okay, they're seen as no longer being invincible. And especially among the Native Americans who see this as an opportunity, like, we can beat these guys, we can make a difference. So uprisings within the colonies, Native American Indian tribes are going to start attacking frontier farms and settlements and villages, burning in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia, and doing a great amount of damage. All of this is a sort of a shockwave after the loss that Braddock suffered. So Washington's seeing all this going on, and he's really frustrated at the British, what he sees as their incompetence, or at least this is what the history is saying, the British incompetence of this war. And the British are going to keep losing battles for another couple of years. It's going to be a little while before they actually get on the winning side of things again. It won't happen until a politician in Britain is elected as minister by William Pitt. William Pitt is himself pretty arrogant and pretty bold, and he declares that he's the only one who could save Britain from all of this mess. Turns out he was right, but it was a pretty bold statement for coming from someone from a country that was losing over and over and over again. So, because of his arrogance and his confidence, the British are going to get fired up, both in Britain and around the world. Their forces, their troops, they get fired up. This Pitt guy is really going to turn things around for us. It turns out they do. In the Americas, the British are going to start winning series of battles, beginning with the Battle of Victory at Quebec, which is an important gateway into French Canada. Beginning there, they go on a winning streak, if you will, and ultimately it will bring the end of the war. The Treaty of Paris is going to finally be signed in February of 1763. The Treaty of Paris of 1763. There'll be other treaties of Paris, so make sure you get the right one. Treaty of Paris of 1763 ends the French and Indian War. At this point now, Britain is now the largest and richest military empire in the entire world. France has lost. France is going to lose is going to lose all their lands east of the Mississippi River. They're going to lose Canada. Okay, they're still going to have claims west of the Mississippi River. Remember, from earlier years, you learned that Thomas Jefferson is going to buy the Louisiana Purchase from France. So we know that the French still have some control of land. Okay, I have to stop me right there. That's not right. Not even close. Spain now controls Louisiana. France, not in the picture. Yes, they will get Louisiana back eventually from Spain, but right now, France has lost everything in North America. It all belongs to Spain. Sorry for the interruption. Back to your regular scheduled video over there. Spain, who was allied with France mostly because of their Catholic ties, both being devoutly Catholic nations and tied with the Pope, they're going to lose as well because they were helping out the French, and they're going to lose some of their claims in what is Florida. Now, they're not going to lose all of Florida, but some of the land that they claim they're going to have to give up to England. Okay? So ultimately now we've got Great Britain now controls all of North America, east of the Mississippi River. The colonists are really glad about this. They're like, this is awesome. We can keep going and spreading west. And Pontiac, Ottawa tribe, says this is going to be a problem. We can't let this happen. So he leads the Ottawas against the British, a number of forts in the Ohio River Valley and along Lake Erie, defeating 8 of them, capturing 8 forts along the way. So the British are going to want to negotiate peace. So kind of underhandedly, meeting with 2 Delaware tribal chiefs, they present them with a gift of blankets, but these blankets are infected with smallpox. Okay, the disease spreads so rapidly like wildfire through these Native American troops. So weakened by disease and by war, they're forced to negotiate with the British to end of hostilities. And so there you have it. What this is going to do, though, is going to get Britain to issue a proclamation of 1763. The Proclamation of 1763 is going to prevent colonists from settling west of the Appalachian Mountains. As the British saw, they were losing against these Native Americans out there, so they thought maybe it would be best if the colonists didn't settle there wouldn't be any conflict. The colonists were upset about this. They figure, we just fought a war so that we could settle there. You can't stop us. And really, they couldn't. I mean, what are you going to do? They didn't have a fence or anything at the top of the Appalachian Mountains, and you can't go over there. So the settlers continue to go west over there, despite the proclamation of 1763. And this is going to lead to military problems for the British, who really can't stretch themselves out that thin to try and cover all of this defending of the colonists. As a result, the British are going to have a military force that's going to remain in the colonies of over 10,000 soldiers that are supposed to be there for defense and protect the colonists from Native Americans or from French or from Spanish. But the colonists, some of them see this as perhaps a standing army that could turn against them. And as a result, they were really kind of weary and didn't like the idea of having a standing army there. The other problem, too, was salutary neglect. Bye-bye. That's gone. No more salutary neglect. This new King George III, who's on the throne, he's like, yeah, this is expensive, and you guys need to pay for it. I mean, we're protecting you. You need to pay for it. And so, as you know, and we're going to talk more about, there's going to be a series of taxes and laws that are going to change things for the colonists, going to make them pretty unhappy. Ultimately, in about a decade or so, the American Revolution. All right. So here we go. We're on the way. We're setting the stage for all of that conflict and all those big events that you know of leading to the American Revolution. Thanks for listening. Good night.